As we journey to the cross with Jesus throughout this wilderness season of Lent, we extinguish one candle each Sunday as we draw nearer to his death on Good Friday. Acknowledging the uncertainty we are in now and the darkness that is still yet to come, we confess our own participation in that darkness as people who sometimes fail to be the light of Christ to the world. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening at Calvary, whenever you are tuning in and watching this worship service. Grace and peace to you from our home to yours. Just as a reminder, as you view this worship experience, if you'd like, you can print out a copy of the order of worship that's linked in the e-blast you received along with the link to this service, or you can pull it up on your iPhone or iPad or any device you have to follow along. A few announcements for you this week. The e-news continues to be your best source of information during this time that we are connecting virtually. So make sure you're checking that regularly, and if you're not receiving emails from us, check your junk folder, your spam folder, and if that continues to happen, if the e-news goes there, then try adding cbc@calvarydenver.org to your address book as a contact, and that should prevent your e-news from going into the spam folder. The e-news this week has a lot of opportunities for you to connect more deeply with one another, and also some resources for you, some links for spiritual renewal and faith resources, family resources, so please check all of that out. It also has information about how to access our new online directory so that you can better stay in touch with one another in the coming weeks. A couple of other announcements is to say that if you haven't yet joined us for one of our virtual Zoom gatherings on Wednesday evenings at 6:30, please do so. It's a casual time of connection. We check in with one another, see how we're doing. We get to see each other's faces. We pray together, we have a devotional, and it's a wonderful midweek check-in. Also, believe it or not, Holy Week is upon us, and next week is Palm Sunday. If you've been around Calvary a while, you know that we normally have a Palm Sunday processional where we wave palms as we enter the sanctuary, and we want to try to create just a little bit of that experience together this Sunday on Palm Sunday. And so we have linked in the e-news 2 patterns for you. They look like this. One's a little bit easier, one's a little bit harder, depends on how crafty you would like to be. You can use these patterns, you can color them and cut them out, trace them on construction paper, cut them out, find your own pattern, create your own palm branch, or just go into the yard and pick up a branch of any kind. Take a photo of yourself waving the branch, or do a short video clip, 2 to 3 seconds. There's instructions about how to get that photo or video to us so that you can be part of our virtual Palm Sunday processional. But this is a fun way for us to see our faces and to celebrate Jesus as he enters Jerusalem. Also, Easter is upon us in a couple of weeks as well, and we'll be creating something kind of similar, a virtual Easter garden. We're asking you, instead of purchasing an Easter lily like you might have in the past, to make a contribution of $10 online. That money will go to support our Family Promise Ministry, Bootstraps and Blessings, and also to help continue to pay our hourly and contract workers throughout this time. And so once you make that donation, you can snap a photo of you and your family next to a plant or a flower in your own home, or maybe just take a picture of a pretty flower that's in your neighborhood and send that in. And you can let us know who your Easter garden gift is in memory of, or in honor of, or in celebration or gratitude for. And we'll have a list of that for Easter Sunday. There will be other Holy Week offerings coming your way. So again, watch your e-news for those announcements. And just a final word, I've been so grateful to see how you all have been caring for one another, and for even me and for your pastors and staff during this time. I've received a few cards from you all, and phone calls and email check-ins. Our best way to care for each other during this time is to do just that. And we have finished dividing up our congregation into 10 to 12 name lists. So we are in need of just a few more volunteers. We'll be sending out those lists to the volunteers this week to help either send a text message, make a phone call, write a note or an email of encouragement. We also have an online form developed that will guide you as you make those calls and contacts. So please, if you have some extra time on your hands in this season, consider emailing cbc@calvarydenver.org to let us know that you're willing to be one of those care team member callers and volunteers. Well, let us now continue in worship.
We come to you, O God.
To thank you for what is good.
We come to you, O God.
To cry out for what is wrong.
We come to you, O God.
To ask for help and healing.
We come to you, O God.
With aching hearts and somber souls.
We come to you, O God.
As a community.
Help us to hear your word, to sense your presence, and to journey together in spirit, even as we are physically apart. As we worship, draw near to us, O God. Be a light unto our path.
forget your love for me, and yet my heart forever is wandering. Jesus, be my guide and hold me to your side. I will love you to the end. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path.
Welcome to our time of prayer. I just wanted to make sure that you knew about our prayer list. It looks like this. It is linked in the e-news. And down below, you'll see the friends and family concerns. And the ones that are highlighted are from this past week. So just make sure that you look at this at some point, just so you know about the prayer concerns of our congregation. Let us pray together. Powerful God, creator, sustainer of the universe, we are thankful for certain things this morning. We are thankful that we can worship as a community, even though we are apart. We are thankful for food in our fridge. We are thankful for friends and family that we can FaceTime with. We're thankful for sunshine and blue skies. Although we admit sometimes that it's hard to find things that we are grateful for. Sometimes we just get too overwhelmed by the unknown, by bad news and grim statistics. We don't know how long we'll have to just see our friends virtually or wave to family members from a distance. We don't know how long we will be in danger just by going outside, how long we will be unemployed. The unknown is overwhelming. And the fear that we hold is quite heavy, oh God. It weighs down on our bodies, on our spirits. It makes our bones tired. Sometimes we struggle giving words of praise to you, having an attitude of worship. We struggle being able to concentrate on any normal task. Remind us, oh God, that it's okay to sit in lament. Often we are told to repress our pain, but you remind us in scriptures that it's okay to sit with it for a while. And as we approach Holy Week, without being able to gather together, we admit that we are grieving. God, comfort us. Help us to find joy and community in this different way of being church. Whether that's waving a paper palm branch in our homes, or creating an Easter garden. Easter, it will be different this year, but we can still celebrate its meaning. Especially in this time, remind us of Easter's message that death does not have the final say if we are your beloved children. Help us to be grateful for still having each other and having our church. And there are specific people on our hearts, oh God, that we lift up during this time. And there are more than are listed here. Friends of friends, acquaintances that we know about that are struggling with this virus. And you know their names, oh God. Lift them up in your care. We lift up Becky Warford as she begins a life without Dawn, and we lift up Carol Willard, who celebrated a birthday this past week and is learning to live life without John. Lift up David Farwig, our director of music, as he deals with the second week of this virus, which feels worse than the first. Lift up his husband, Greg, as Greg has symptoms of the virus, and help them both get what they need to sustain themselves through this. Lord God, we lift up Krista Baglian's cousin, Daniel, who has had a setback and is back on a ventilator. We lift up friends of Am Scalfaro, Amy Grizzle Kane, who has a bacterial infection in her lungs. Give her lungs strength and healing, oh God. We lift up Ann Scalfaro's friend, Michael, and their 4-year-old son, Sage, who both have the virus. Give their bodies the ability to fight back. Give their lungs strength. We lift up the son of David and Joyce Reed, who had an accident and broke his back and his foot. Be with him, oh God. We lift up Rosemary White's daughter-in-law, Gretchen, who is fighting a blood infection. We lift up Chris's Wild's mom, Jean, who is fighting a bladder infection. Give her strength, oh God. Lift up Janine Crane, who is beginning outpatient dialysis next week. We praise you that her time at the hospital is finally coming to an end, and give Dave strength as her caregiver. Lord God, there's a Celtic prayer that goes like this. Call me, O Lord, as you stilled the storm. Keep me from harm. Let all the tumult within me cease. Enfold me, Lord, in your peace. Lord God, I ask that your peace be wrapped around us like a blanket, that we feel it in every part of our bodies, even when we're dealing with all this fatigue from the trauma of this virus. And in this prayer that we are about to recite together, it says, give us this day our daily bread. Help us to remember that you are our provider, and you will provide for us each day what we need, even in a time of scarcity. Now let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Good morning, Calvary. My name's Evan, and I'll be doing a word for God's children. If you could have your little kids come up to the TV, that'd be awesome. Hi, boys and girls. Today, we are going to practice the same prayer that Pastor Ann taught us a couple weeks ago. So if you didn't get to see that, follow along with me. And if you did, let's practice it, because this one is a lot of fun. And I know I'm going to keep this one in my routine, okay? So first we say, put your hands in the air up real high and say, God is all above us, okay? Now take your hands, go to the ground and say, God is all below us. Come back up, put your hands on your heart and say, God is within us. Now take your arms way out and spin around and say, God is with the world. This is a good way, guys, to stay grounded and to have fun and to just remind us that God is everywhere and in everything. So I invite you now to pray with me. Dear God, thank you so much for all of the blessings we all have in our lives. Thank you for things like cell phones and computers that make it possible to be able to have church and prayer with each other, even if we're not right by each other. Thank you for watching out for us and keeping our friends and our family and ourselves healthy in this time. Amen. Calvary, we miss you guys, and we can't wait until we're all together again. Until then, stay healthy and stay safe. We'll see you soon.
Calvary, even though we are physically apart during this time, we are still one in spirit and in mission. And so as we seek to continue to pay all of our staff, including our contract workers and hourly employees during this time, and as we seek to utilize new technologies to keep us connected socially and spiritually, and as we continue to serve our community through providing to-go food bags on Mondays, we continue to be the church, Calvary, even as we're not gathering in the church building, and your giving makes a difference. Calvary is a congregation-supported church. Your tithes and offerings, as well as mine, that's what makes all of Calvary's mission and ministry possible, including this worship service. There are easy ways that you can give to our ministry. Calvary, giving from your smartphone is easy. You're just going to open your text message app, start a new text. You're going to send it to 77977. And then you're going to text open, OPEN, the numeral 2, the word all. Send that off, and you'll shortly receive a reply back with a link to give. Giving on your tablet or computer is also easy. Just go to your search bar, type in calvarydenver.org. When you get to our homepage, you'll just click the Give button. You'll see a box that says click here for online giving. And then it'll take you right to our Give page, and you can choose from a drop-down menu of different options, as well as the amount of your gift. You can also set up a recurring gift. You can also give through the old-fashioned checkbook. We are still receiving mail at Calvary, so if you have your weekly or monthly tithe or offering that you'd like to mail to the church, we will receive that. Also, just a reminder that throughout the month of March, we have been receiving the America for Christ offering, which supports the American Baptist Home Mission Societies. And that provides resources for cultivating leaders, equipping disciples, and long-term recovery after natural disasters. It also helps with things like immigration and refugee resettlement, ministries that help children in impoverished neighborhoods, volunteer mobilization, prisoner reentry, and other community outreach ministries. This is the last week we'll be receiving the America for Christ offering, so to give to that, just simply write AFC in the memo line of your check, or indicate that under the other choice on online giving. Calvary, in a time where the message of scarcity is loud and clear all around us, may we give this morning or this afternoon or evening from a place of abundance, a place of generosity and joy and gratitude to God for the blessings of our lives.
A reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 13. As he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." And Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? What will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs. But in those days and after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. And the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. Then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branches become tender and put forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you will know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." But about that day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware. Keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It's like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on watch. Therefore, keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening or at midnight, at cockcrow or at dawn. Or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to all. Keep awake.
What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? Justice, kindness, walk humbly with your God.
What a text we have today. It is, I believe, a text for such a time as this time of not knowing. What the disciples want from Jesus is a timeline, and instead what Jesus gives them is a task. Keep awake. Now, Peter, James, John, and Andrew, they have just left the temple with Jesus. Remember where we left off last week. Jesus had pointed out to them the example of the widow putting 2 coins into the temple treasury. Yet the disciples still seem caught up with big and impressive things as they are pointing out the big stones and the big buildings around them, almost like a modern-day tourist in Jerusalem saying, look at these big stones and buildings. And, Jesus simply says in response, yeah, these stones and buildings, they'll all be thrown down. This is enough to silence the disciples, because it's quite a bit of time before anyone speaks again, at least the way Mark tells the story. So they have to kind of cross and trek across the Kidron Valley, which is not even really a mile, but they have to go uphill to the Mount of Olives. So it makes sense that after this uphill trek that they would perch to rest a while. And Mark tells us that while they're taking this water break, Peter, James, John, and Andrew ask Jesus privately, and in my head they're kind of whispering, tell us, when will this happen? What are the signs that are going to show us that these things are going to take place? It kind of feels like they're trying to get insider information from Jesus, right? Like, come on, Jesus, give us the inside scoop. Not just the stuff that you say behind the podium on the press conference, but tell us what you really know. The information that you're holding back from everyone else. Well, Jesus probably should have asked, do you really want to know? But he doesn't. He launches into a cryptic and disconcerting teaching that has all of us on the edge of our seats. Now, Mark 13 is often called the Little Apocalypse because it has some language similarities to what's called the Great Apocalypse, the book of Revelation written by John on the Isle of Patmos. Now, we've been hearing this word a lot recently, haven't we? Apocalypse, apocalyptic. March 1st, Forbes magazine. If coronavirus takes hold in U.S., it will be more than a retail apocalypse. It'll be Armageddon. March 2nd, Newsweek. Coronavirus will spread to every single state, but this is not the zombie apocalypse. Okay. March 10th, Financial Times. It's apocalyptic. Coronavirus turns Seattle into a ghost town. March 13th, Canada's National Post. As coronavirus panic mounts, grocery shopping starts to look apocalyptic. March 16th, Israel Antiquities Authority. Fearing coronavirus apocalypse, man returns stolen artifact to Israeli authorities. I guess some good can come out of this. March 23rd, CNN. Coronavirus is bringing a plague of dangerous doomsday apocalyptic predictions. March 25th, the New York Times. 13 deaths in one day. An apocalyptic coronavirus surge at a New York City hospital. March 26th, Vanity Fair. Coronavirus deaths are reaching apocalyptic heights. Why is everyone using the word apocalyptic to describe the coronavirus? Well, a large part of this is because I think the word is vastly misunderstood. People think it is just about, quote, the end times and the second coming of Christ. And when they think that, they're actually conflating the word apocalyptic, with the book of Revelation, with also some pop culture, like from the Left Behind series, and with it as well. For example, a concept like the rapture, where one day we'll wake up and our loved ones will be floating to heaven and we'll remain behind, that's actually not in the book of Revelation, right? I could go on about this, but this sermon is about Mark 13, not Revelation. But there are a lot of misconceptions out there about what apocalyptic means. But one real reason for the reference could be that apocalyptic literature and language usually comes out of troubling times, right? Times where it feels like the end of the world is imminent. For example, the book of Daniel comes in an era when the temple was profaned by pagan religious practices that were being forced onto the Jewish people. The book of Revelation was written in an era when Christians were persecuted because they refused to worship the Roman emperor. In all truth, the word apocalypse actually simply just means, from the Greek, unveiling, or from the Latin, revelation. Did you know that an apocalypse is simply an unveiling? Something once hidden is now disclosed. Something is being revealed. Now, the point of apocalyptic literature is to show us what this revelation is, right? And it's to actually proclaim a message of hope. Did you know? I mean, often the language is kind of coded and veiled because they don't want people in authority to understand the language, and so signs and symbols will be used. But apocalyptic language is merely a way of talking about an alter reality, a different reality to how the world is now, in a way that is hope-filled and not doomsday-filled. And you can see this in Mark 13, verse 8, right? Nations are rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There's going to be earthquakes and famines, but this is the beginning of birth pangs. Listen to that metaphor, birth pangs. What happens in birth, right? Something new is created. Life is born anew. The message of apocalyptic literature is that suffering is not the end. Suffering is not the end all be all. Tragedy and disaster is not the end. But here's the thing. If we read literature and stories like the book of Revelation or even Mark chapter 13 through the lens of our one moment in time, it's going to feel like it's the end of the world. But that ignores the fact that it's speaking to a much larger story of which we are a part, right? That apocalyptic literature is meant to draw us to a new vision, a different reality, something beyond what we can imagine here and now. And it's not to discount the reality that we're living in, right? It's just to draw our attention and our vision upward. And this holding of the greater vision doesn't mean that we're here on earth living in some fantasy world, ignoring what's happening around us. But rather, when you have a vision of hope, something that's calling you forward in life, it can actually change your attitudes and your actions about how we're living today, right? Listen to Revelation 21, right? Everything is going to be made new. No more death, no more mourning or crying or pain. The old order of things will pass away and we will live with God. Who doesn't want that? Now, we don't understand fully what that means or what that looks like. We can't even fully comprehend those words, but it is a future vision that guides our lives today. And it points to a truth about our understanding of our lives in time that is not linear, right? It's cyclical. And this is the pattern of creation that we see over and over again. A cycle of birth, life, suffering, death, and rebirth. Just look at the seasons. I mean, Jesus speaks of this in Mark 13, the leaves and the buds coming up on the branches. Jesus says these are signs, the beginning signs of new life, abundant life, growth. The season of summer and joy and freedom is going to be among us and around us soon. But summer comes and then it doesn't last, does it? The grass withers and fades, the leaves fall, and autumn comes as a way of preparing us for death, for winter, for the cold. It is a stark and harsh reality. It is lonely. But then the leaf grows, the bud sprouts, and we see again life after death. This cosmic pattern in creation is actually the hidden message in Mark 13 for us today, as it plays out in Jesus' life. This is the pattern that Jesus is speaking about to his disciples when he says to them, when are these things going to occur and how will we know when the time is coming? Well, I can tell you when they're not going to occur. He's like, not when wars and rumors of wars are around, not when nations are rising against nation and earthquakes and famines and diseases are happening. Those are things that happen all the time. They've been with you from the beginning. They'll be with you to the end. Don't look at those things as a sign of the times that the end is near. This whole thing is not about the end, Jesus says. It's about the beginning, right? And in his own life, he points to the rebirth and renewal, the sprouting of that leaf on the branch, toward the fact that yes, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. And what words is he talking about? Well, I think he's talking about the words that come out of his mouth directly after that sentence. Words in verses 32 through 37, words that speak to his imminent death and the suffering he will endure. Again, an apocalypse is a revelation or a disclosure. An apocalypse is something that shapes the way in which you see things. What's striking here in Mark is that he puts this discourse right before Jesus' passion narrative so that we are shaped to see Jesus' passion narrative differently, so that we can see something that we need to see in our time of trouble. So the world-altering event in Mark, guess what it is? This apocalyptic event, it's Jesus' crucifixion. And of course then his resurrection. That is the apocalyptic end times moment that Jesus is pointing to in Mark chapter 13, which we all know isn't the end, right? It's actually just the beginning. Think of your own Christian faith journey. When you understood that it's not just about living this life and suffering and dying, but that the resurrection has hope and can give meaning to your life, that's just the beginning of how we come to understand our faith and who we are as people and how we can live and rise above our current circumstances. This is the heart of our faith, hope, right? And that's the revelation in this text. And Mark 13 is rich with all kinds of revealing language about this. We already talked about the temple stones coming down. That's really a metaphor for the temple as an institution coming to an end. It's not going to look the same. We know that Mark was written somewhere around 70 AD when the temple was actually destroyed. And later in Mark 15, when Jesus is breathing his last, we read that the veil of the temple is torn into. Institutional religion, as they've known it, will never be the same again. There's another one of these references in Mark 13. Jesus speaks about the coming of the Son of Man in verse 26, and he says the sun will be darkened. Well, what happens on Good Friday? Jump ahead to Mark 15. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land. There's this sense of a cosmic shaking, and yes, we do see the Son of Man in clouds and glory, but it's not what you expect. It's the crucified Jesus on the Golgotha hill with the clouds behind him, and this becomes a moment of disclosure, right? The big sight, if you will, that gives us insight into who we are as humans, that we suffer, that Jesus suffered, that there's solidarity in our suffering, and this shapes how we will come to see the rest of our faith, because without suffering and death, you don't get resurrection. And of course, at the end of the chapter 13, we see Jesus call for wakefulness. Keep awake. And what does Jesus say just one chapter later to his disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane? Could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? But these aren't all the allusions. Actually, almost all of the references to Jesus' passion come in verse 35. You don't know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, at midnight, at cockcrow, at dawn. In this one verse, we have the story of the passion. And even more, we have the story of how we failed to keep alert all along the way. In the evening, right? The evening is when the disciples gather for the Passover meal, for the Last Supper, and Jesus tells them that one of them will betray him, and every single person says, surely not I. At midnight, Peter, James, and John go to the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus. They fall asleep on him. This is where Jesus prays. It's where he's betrayed and arrested, and the disciples flee. At cockcrow, Peter realizes he has denied Jesus 3 times, and he weeps. And at dawn, Jesus is brought by the chief priests and scribes before Pilate to be tried, and he stands utterly alone. Not one of his disciples waits and watches with him. You see, these 4 words, evening, midnight, cockcrow, dawn, they're not referring to some far away in the distant future. When Jesus asks us to stay alert and stay awake, he's merely asking us what he asked his disciples. He's asking us to stay awake and alert to the present moment. Not to become obsessed with or worried about the end times, but to be alert and awake to what is happening here and now all around us. And why do we need to keep awake, right? Why can't I just numb out during this time, zone out, sleep my way through the next few weeks until this coronavirus crisis is over? Well, we have to keep awake, right? Because we have to give witness to this story that shapes our lives. That Easter is coming, that birth is coming, resurrection is coming, new life is coming. It's not just enough for us to hear this story, let it go in one ear and out the other, right? We can't just sit around passively waiting for this to happen. Jesus says, just as servants don't know when their master will come home, we must keep awake. Now, the point here is not that what the servants are actually doing in the house is going to make a difference as to when the master comes home. The master's going to come home when the master wants to come home, whether the servants do anything or not. Jesus is going to rise on the 3rd day, whether we believe in that or not. Whether we're sitting in our pretty pews surrounded by lilies and singing the Hallelujah chorus, or whether we're in our living rooms, life and resurrection will continue to happen all around us without any doing on our own. Just look at the spring flowers coming out of the earth around us. The difference is, if we are awake, if we keep alert, if we are attuned and actively paying attention to our lives and to observing what is happening around us, then I think we will be ready for a moment of revelation, a moment of disclosure, a moment of transformation, of something new that God is saying to us in our lives and doing in and through our lives. Not just individually, but communally. An apocalypse is an unveiling. Something once hidden is now disclosed. In this time of coronavirus, COVID-19, in this time that everyone's calling apocalyptic, could it be that something hidden is indeed being disclosed to us? Of course, the virus is hidden from our sight. We can't see it, but we know about it now, right? And our media and medical professionals and leaders, they are disclosing information to us that it is important for us to heed that and listen to that. But beyond that information, I think there could be something more being disclosed to all of us in and through this experience. Something that God is revealing to us if we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And I don't think it's some insight that one of us is going to get, some expert, right? It's going to come to all of us. It's something that we will have to discern together in community. We have to ask each other, what is being revealed to you through this? What are you learning? Where is your growth point? What are you struggling with? And we must listen to each other. Because friends, it is far too easy to get caught up in the prevailing messages of fear and scarcity and death and doom. And don't get me wrong, these are real. Death is real. Economic upheaval is real. Unemployment is real. Not being able to sit with your loved one as they die is real. Not being able to gather with a community after your loved one dies to grieve together is real. Not being able to go on a long-awaited trip or vacation or to miss your graduation or wedding, that is real. Being alone in your house, that kind of loneliness is real. And doctors and nurses having to make heart-wrenching decisions because of lack of equipment, that is real. To live with this apocalyptic vision of hope is not to deny the reality in which we are living, right? It's to live in that reality and to realize that there is a greater truth that draws us forward, that helps us get up in the morning, that helps us put one foot in front of the other, even in this time of uncertainty and unknowing. To be honest with you, passages like this have never meant a lot to me. I've never really understood talk of the end times. I mean, we live 2,000 plus years away from when all this talk about the second coming of Christ would come, or these signs and things to watch for. It just never resonated with me. But I tell you what, now more than ever, in this time of coronavirus and COVID-19, I understand the urgency of the disciples' question. When will we know that the end is near, right? When will this be over? That's the question I wake up with every morning. It's the question that I go to sleep with every night. We have some science that maybe is starting to help us know the answer. The truth is, though, God only knows when this is going to be over. What's interesting is that the professionals are saying the virus is the thing that's going to let us know when this is over. But you know what they also say? We can play a role in affecting the virus's behavior by how much we adhere to social distancing, which is to say our actions, or in this case our inactions, matter. I think this is the very thing that Jesus is trying to get across to his disciples in Mark, right? About that day or hour, no one knows. The angels don't know, I don't know, only the Father knows. And so Jesus says, keep alert, keep awake, right? It's almost as if he's saying to us, try not to focus on the timeline, but focus on the task at hand. The thing is, like the disciples, we are living in a time of not knowing. But what else is new, right? Haven't we always been living in a time like this? Of not knowing what the next day will bring? Well, yeah, but it kind of feels different now, doesn't it? And it feels different because we've been living under the illusion of control, right? That we can plan things out and have an event on the calendar. And when we put it there, that means it's actually going to happen. But the truth is, we've never had any guarantees in life. We've just become really comfortable with being able to plan and think about things in advance. But that's kind of stripped away now. Jesus doesn't ask his disciples in Mark 13 to plan out their lives. All he asks them to do is to stay awake, to be present with him. Not to save him, not to keep him from suffering, keep him from dying. He just says, be with me, stay with me, keep awake, keep alert, be in it. You know, as Natalie Sleeth writes in the song that we're going to sing shortly, in the end is our beginning, something God alone can see. Well, the thing about that is, I don't think it's something that only God can see because God's been keeping something from us. I think it's something that only God sees because our own vision has been veiled, right? Because the thing is that through Jesus' life, through his suffering and crucifixion and resurrection, God has been showing us the good news of the gospel truth all along, that in and through times like these, trials and tribulations and suffering, something new is going to emerge. A resurrection will happen, a transformation will take place. And I know that we'll get through this time because I know the story of our faith. It's a story of getting through suffering and emerging on the other side. It is a story that binds us together when we feel most apart. It's a story of feeling at our lowest point and walking toward that tomb with grief, mourning the death of our Lord Jesus Christ, and finally having that moment of wakefulness when we open our eyes and we see that the stone has been rolled away. Maybe I can see that today and you can't. Maybe I'm not able to see it tomorrow, but you can. We have to keep pointing to one another and reminding each other of this revelation, of the gift of the resurrection, of this promise of new life and new hope that always comes in and through suffering and death. Will we live in this time of coronavirus, in this time of not knowing? Will we live in this time of not knowing, believing and knowing in the truth of God's presence with us and within us, that gives us the strength to carry on, the compassion to journey alongside one another, and the courage to rise up and to transform what feels like inevitable death and doom into life anew? After all, this is what Jesus taught us and what he showed us with his life. If you've never believed it before, now is as good a time as any to give it a try. The power of hope, the power of the resurrection is real. It doesn't deny or ignore suffering and death. It pushes in and through those things to bring something new. Resurrection is revelation. So, how alert we are, it will make a difference. And how awake we stay, it'll change the end of the story. Amen. Calvary, as we sing this hymn of response, I invite you to listen to how God is speaking into your heart and life today. We don't have to be sitting in a sanctuary or in church pews for God to move and for us to respond to the good news of the gospel. If you'd like to talk with somebody about your faith or learn more about this community of faith called Calvary, or if you need a word of prayer, I would love to connect with you or any one of our pastors. You can contact us by emailing cbc@calvarydenver.org or calling 303-757-8421. As you sing this final hymn, listen for how the Spirit of God is at work in your life. Know that you are not alone. We are all on this journey together, and we are all called and connected by Christ. As you go throughout your week, I hope you find time to step outside and take a deep breath. Breathe in the life that God has given you. And may you go with these words. Take bread for the journey and strength for the fight. Comfort to sleep through the night. Wisdom to choose at the fork in the road. And a heart that knows the way home. And for the faithful, and for the weary, and for the hopeful, here is my prayer. Go in peace, live in grace, trust in the arms that will hold you. Go in peace, live in grace, trust God's